Alright, so a brand new Arkham game has just been announced to release later this year, known as Batman Arkham Shadow. But it isn't in the way you'd all expect, because instead of an Arkham game in the style we're all used to and we all wanted, the game is actually going to be a VR experience this time around. Just like how they released Arkham VR all the way back when Arkham Knight came out originally. But with the game just being announced a couple days ago, there's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered. So that's why in this video, we're going to be going over 5 of the main questions that need to be answered going into Batman Arkham Shadow to answer the real question going through everyone's mind: is Batman Arkham Shadow going to be worth playing, or is it going to be another cash grab like Suicide Squad? Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now let's get into it, shall we? So the first question I want to get into right off the bat is, when is the game gonna take place? Because as it stands at the moment, with Suicide Squad being confirmed to be in the main Arkhamverse and all, Batman is dead and will probably come back in the end depending on what Rocksteady wants to do with the series going forward. But as we know, at this point in the main continuity, Batman is completely dead and gone. So how is Batman alive in Arkham Shadow then? This question can be answered in 2 different ways. The first is that this game is set in an alternate universe and isn't connected to the main Arkhamverse like Suicide Squad is. Or this game takes place sometime after Arkham Origins but before Arkham Asylum. And this one is probably what makes the most sense and is most likely to happen, because in my opinion, I don't see Warner Brothers making an Arkham game that isn't directly connected to the main Arkhamverse, because look what happened with Suicide Squad. And I think having a smaller experience to give us a sneak peek at what Batman has been doing in the years between Origins and Asylum is pretty interesting, not gonna lie. But one of the reasons why I think that this game will take place after Origins is obviously because there isn't much place else to set this game in, but it's also because of a couple of Easter eggs that we can see in the short trailer that we get from DC. So the first Easter egg that we can find is right at the start of the trailer, where the rat comes around the corner, and when you look at that, there seems to be a business card or badge laying around in a random alleyway. But if we take a closer look at the contents of the badge, we can see that it belongs to Dr. Harleen Quinzel, also known as Harley Quinn. And if this game took place around the time of Arkham Asylum or later, this badge would not exist at this point and would probably have been destroyed long ago. But since it seems still intact, and by the end of Origins, Harley was still posing as the doctor she still was, it's safe to say that at this point she had recently begun taking up the mantle of Harley Quinn and abandoned her internship at Blackgate. But if that's not enough to convince you, apart from Harley Quinn's old badge, I think we can probably pinpoint how long after Origins this game takes place from this next Easter egg, which is the words "Vote Den" being seen twice throughout this entire trailer. Once while the rat is running, we can see a pin with those very words on them, and another where it's seen graffitied on a wall of the alleyway. This tells us that Two-Face doesn't exist yet and that Harvey has already been elected as district attorney, as in Arkham Origins it's shown on a newspaper that he had already won the election. But the reason why I think he's already been elected versus the election currently going on in Arkham Shadow is because all these items are found within the alleyway, such as the Harley Quinn badge, which shows up in the alleyway because it's clearly old and disposed of, which means the pin we find is also old and disposed of, which points to the election being over and Harvey currently being the DA. You could also technically say that Harvey could already be Two-Face in this instance because of the pin being old, but since the Harley badge still looks in alright condition, this means that all of this has to have happened recently, so it's not that far in the timeline. But this also tells us that Harvey has yet to prosecute Carmine Falcone, and the Long Halloween storyline is in the process of happening as we speak. But for those of you that don't know, in the Arkhamverse, the Holiday Killer does indeed exist, as seen in Two-Face's hideout in Robin's DLC, and a reference made by Alfred during the Professor Pig side mission. But also that Falcone is actually the one to throw the acid in Harvey's face instead of Maroni in the Arkhamverse, which is revealed during the tapes with Hugo Strange found in Arkham City. Now I hear you wondering, you just talked for 3 minutes about the first couple seconds of the trailer. Where are you going with all this? Well, with these facts in mind, we can pinpoint somewhat exactly when this game will take place, and that is within the short period of time where Harvey is elected as DA and before the trial of Carmine Falcone. And if we're gonna go off the story of the Long Halloween, when Harvey is hit by the acid from Maroni, he had only been elected as DA for about a month. So in this game, we're probably gonna see a lot of sightings of Dent and Falcone if this is the case, as the Falcone trial is a very prominent point of contention within the Arkham game, as this is the point where Harvey ultimately transforms into the villain we all see today. So in conclusion, Batman Arkham Shadow will most likely take place within the time period of Harvey's DA election and the Falcone trial, which is from Halloween night all the way to Thanksgiving in the comics. But in this game's universe, he's actually elected to DA sometime before Christmas Eve. But to keep the length of time between the events the same, we'll still assume that he gets hit with the acid a month later, sometime in January, which of course all takes place after the events of Arkham Origins. And this leads straight into the next question, which is, what characters will be used in this game and who's gonna be the main antagonist? Well, that's technically 2 questions, but I'll answer them together. So as we just discussed a few seconds ago, this game will most likely coincide with the Long Halloween storyline, with both Falcone and Dent being prominent figures within it. Now, it would be pretty cool to see this case play out within the game in real time, but I highly doubt it'll happen, because if it was, then the game wouldn't be be called Arkham Shadow. But anyways, the most I think is gonna happen is we'll probably get a few one-on-one interactions with Harvey, as up to this point we've never truly seen Harvey Dent, only Two-Face. So I think it'd be pretty cool if we'd be able to talk with Harvey and see how he acts before he turns into Two-Face. But I do actually think that the incident may actually happen in this game, as just because the Long Halloween storyline exists in the game doesn't mean we can't watch as Harvey is doused with acid from Falcone. But the only reason why I say this is a possibility to show up in the game is purely because the time period between the DA win and the acid incident is only in the span of a month. And if this game truly does take place after Origins, we'll most likely be able to witness this event firsthand, which in my opinion would be pretty cool. But since this is a VR game, there's most likely going to be one major antagonist in this game, which leads us to the second question: who is going to be the main antagonist of this game? Which brings us to the Ratcatcher. And I'm not going to take any credit for this, as I was struggling myself to figure out who they were teasing within the trailer. All the credit goes to Batman Arkham Videos, who posted a video on all the Easter eggs within this trailer and figured out who the potential main antagonist will be in this game, which is the Ratcatcher. And for those of you who don't know, Ratcatcher, also known as Otis Flanagan, is a not so well known Batman villain, but he has had a share of appearances within the series up to this point, as he's shown up within the Batman Unhinged comic during the trial of the Joker, and has appeared in the form of Easter eggs within the entirety of the Batman Arkham franchise, without ever having a legit appearance in an actual game once. So let's get into what actually gave away Ratcatcher as the main antagonist of this game in the first place. The first obvious giveaway was the mask on the floor that the rat climbs out of when he slips down the tube, which is Ratcatcher's mask, as we can see comparing it to the Arkham Unhinged comic. And the second discovery was on this truck, as we can see his famous red gloves that have appeared in literally every Arkham game up to this point, just so we know that he's still around and kicking. But the one secret I personally didn't see, and what I'll give Batman Arkham Videos credit for, is the gray ghost poster on the wall in the back, which is vandalized to say "now host in Rat." I was honestly taken back at the level of detail in this trailer and how many secrets there actually were within it. It was honestly pretty cool to see. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how Camouflage tackles a character like Ratcatcher that's been teased within every single Arkham game but hasn't appeared physically once until now. But I really hope they do it well, and I do hope that we'll be able to see characters like Dent and Falcone to show how Harvey looked before his accident in the courtroom, and to see in real time how their whole ordeal played out. But now let's move on to the fourth question we should be asking as we get into Batman Arkham Shadow later this year, which is how it's gonna play out, meaning both mechanically and story-wise. Well, to answer this question, let's look back at the original Arkham VR game, where we play as Batman just before Arkham Knight, where we're either hallucinating or dreaming about both Nightwing and Robin being killed after being sent on a mission by Batman. It's never really revealed which one it is in the end, but in that game, Rocksteady gives us availability to many of the abilities that we use in the regular Arkham games, like the crime scene builder and to an extent the grapple hook, but that's just a way to move from place to place in the game. I'm not 100% sure what the story in particular is going to be with Ratcatcher, as since this game will possibly take place near Arkham Origins, it'll be Batman's presumably first interaction with the character as a whole. But as I said before, I think they'll tie some of the Long Halloween story into this game's story, as well as a unique story dedicated strictly to the Ratcatcher, as I'm not 100% sure what it'll be. But if it's as insane as its first appearance in the comics, then I'm on board for sure. I just hope we're able to see some of the other characters within the Batman Rogues gallery that we haven't got to see in the main game, as it seems like this is what they were going for, as Ratcatcher hasn't been seen until now, but time will tell, I guess, and I really hope they do the character justice. But now it's time for the final question going into Batman Arkham Shadow that releases later this year. But before we get into that, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you've made it this far into the video, as I post videos every single week and I have tons of shorts on this channel dedicated strictly to the Arkham game. So if you're into that sort of thing, subscribe and click the notification bell to keep up with my weekly uploads, as it helps me out a lot. But now with the promo out of the way, let's get into the final question going into Batman Arkham Shadow, which is on everyone's minds, and that is, why make a VR game about this? And honestly, that question's been going around wherever I see any post about this game. It's either why make a VR game, or they should have made a regular Batman game instead of what Suicide Squad was. And in my opinion, I honestly think they're making this game to match what they did with the release of Arkham Knight, as Arkham VR was released a year after Knight was released. And it honestly wasn't the worst thing in the world. It had jump scares here and there, and it was overall a really creepy experience, which was great. Of course, you needed a VR set to be able to play it, but even watching it gives you the creeps. I also think for a character like Ratcatcher, his experience would be best played out in VR, as the fear of rats is really common amongst people and will probably give players a good scare depending on how they utilize it. Of course, a regular first-person Batman game could have worked too, but VR is just a whole different experience altogether than just playing on your screen. So I honestly think they wanted to create a VR game instead of a regular one because of the character that'll be tackled, and because they just wanted to match what they did with the original release of Arkham Knight. At first, I was really opposed by the idea of an Arkham VR game, especially after what Rocksteady did with Suicide Squad, but if Camouflage is able to make this game right and do the characters they have access to justice, I honestly will not be mad about it. Because if the story and the experience for the players is good, you can't really be mad at it either. And honestly, anything is better than Suicide Squad. And if this is somehow worse than that, then I've officially given up all hope in the Arkham series. And that's all I gotta say about that. And with that, we reached the end of the video. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel as I post videos every single week. And I have several shorts on the channel dedicated strictly to the Arkham games, so you're always supply with content no matter what. Click on the bat symbol to check out my ranking of the Arkham Asylum bosses, where I go in depth on each one and break down what makes it both good and bad. So check that video out if you're interested. And check out the video to the right of that. So check out the video I think you like on my channel, because if you like this video, you'll definitely like that one. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll see you all next week with another video. Peace!